Hello, wine drinking people. We're back. It's Wednesday, October 20th, and I'm still drinking. Time for what I drank yesterday continued, or what I drank last night, actually. This was from the Louis Jadot tasting at Cafe Maxx, the 2009 vintage from Burgundy. As you see the little bottles on the table, we don't have a lot of little bottles in the store. So these were actually barrel samples, and kind of neat. They started doing them in half bottles, really efficient. If we had like 28 people in the room last night, and we needed 3 half bottles, so it was perfect. And we still had a little bit left over for those that wanted to stay later and check out the wines. I still had some Chassagne and some Polini that I took home with me, and they were great after they opened up, for a couple more hours. This is a great vintage from Burgundy, and in great vintages from Burgundy, there's a lot of hype. And these wines, a lot of the small, they make like 140 different wines at Jadot, or 120 different wines at Jadot. And in a great vintage like 09, somewhere around 80 in a vintage, more difficult vintage like an 08 or an 07. They'll blend some of the smaller vineyard plots together. It's just too hard to market all these little niche items that very few people know about. But in a great vintage, it makes it a little easier because there are a lot of people looking for these wines. And we have a complete list of everything available from the 2009 vintage from Louis Jadot. And if you order before November 15th, we can guarantee that you get almost anything on this list, even some of these wines they only make 40 or 50 cases of. So an outstanding vintage, Louis Jadot, one of the great Négociant éleveurs in Burgundy. And Négociant éleveur, well, what do they do? In addition to owning some vineyards, they also purchase a lot of fruit, and then they even put their name on some wines that the vineyards are owned by some other people. So Louis Jadot, considered in the industry to be at the top level of quality, and we've had Pierre-André Gagné for dinners before. We've had Jacques Lardier. We know these wines very well. I've had an opportunity to taste Louis Jadot barrel tastings many years going back in the past, and I can tell you the wines are always very impressive at the top level. And one of the things that makes Louis Jadot so impressive is their Bourgogne is even really impressive in a vintage like 05. Hey, we still got some 05 Bourgogne left, drinking beautifully right now. First up, a new property that Maison Louis Jadot purchased just a few years ago, Domaine Ferret. We reviewed these Pouilly-Fusées in what I drank yesterday a few weeks ago, and these are the best Pouilly-Fusées that I've ever had. This 09 had a lovely clay-like mineral note, some lovely lemon citrus to the nose, very concentrated and rich for a Pouilly-Fusées on the palate, lovely Asian pear-like fruit with that distinct minerality showing through on the finish. The second wine we had, a Pernod Vergelès, the Clos de la Croix de la Perrière Blanc. The Pernod Vergelès, one of the greatest values in Burgundy, and this wine's $30 a bottle in a vintage like 2009. This wine will last 20 or 30 years or more in your cellar. Very lovely lemon zest and fresh stone-like minerality, focused and precise on the palate with fresh apple and pear fruit. Lovely freshness, a great value. This is a blend of Premier Cru and Village wines. All right, the Meursault Genevière's, one of my favorite Premier Crus in Meursault. A lovely ripe tropical fruit, typical of Meursault. Fresh buttered toast, some clay-like minerality, rich and ripe tropical fruit on the tongue, tangy acidity, really nice little wine. You can tell these wines, the whites maybe not as showy as the reds, believe it or not. Maybe just a little bit closed. After all, they are barrel samples. This one came from a 0.8 acre vineyard. The Polini Montrachet Clos de la Garenne, Duc de Magenta, outstanding wines. One of my favorite Polini Montrachets. This wine had this lovely fresh lime citrus with a hint of honey, very forward with lovely gravelly minerality to it, and pretty floral notes. Lemon drop candy and fresh green apple on the palate, hints of vanilla spice, and a long finish, most excellent, as was the Corton Charlemagne. Corton Charlemagne, when it's really young, can be a little heavy on the palate and a little weighty with the oak on this wine at the moment, but had a lovely rich bouquet, fresh buttered, toasty kind of notes with anise, little hints of anise spice, and a little matchstick note there also. Big and weighty on the palate, like I said, just needs time, but it's got all the right pieces there in place. And then the first of the red wines, the Bon Cru Bouchereau. This wine had this incredible red cherry fruity rose petal floral nose to it, and on the palate just wonderfully forward and seductive. A wine that tasted like a Finnish wine. I mean, I could have sold 10 cases of this wine if I had them at the event last night. Beautiful, lovely soft tannins, really nice little bone wine. And then up Premier Rougien's.